Jackson Miles hated tour groups. Nothing killed the thrill of exploration faster than being stuck with a gaggle of hollow camera-wielding retirees, all vying for the best angle of a monument that hadn't changed in thousands of years. That's why he'd made a beeline for Virion's celestial shrine. Remote, mysterious, and supposedly cursed, it was just the kind of offbeat destination his interstellar travel blog needed to wow his sparse following. And if the rumors about the shrine's ethereal guardian turned out to be nothing more than local folklore, well, at least he'd have some good material to complain about in his next post. The journey to the temple had been a slog, a rattling, grease-streaked shuttle barely held together by duct tape and prayers, followed by a hike through dense jungle, under a sky that shifted colors like an indecisive painter. By the time Jackson reached the temple's ancient stone steps, he was drenched in sweat and regretting every life choice that had brought him here. The shrine loomed above him, a monolithic structure carved from shimmering blackstone that seemed to drink in the sunlight. Its spires twisted upward like reaching fingers, and faint glyphs etched into the walls glowed with an otherworldly blue light. The air buzzed with a strange hum, as if the temple itself were alive and waiting. "Spooky," Jackson muttered, snapping a quick hollow pick. "This'll get at least 10 likes." The massive doors creaked open with a groan that echoed into the jungle behind him. Jackson hesitated. He'd been to plenty of ancient sites, but none that had opened their doors on their own. Still, curiosity outweighed caution, as it always did with him, and he stepped inside. The interior was even more impressive than the outside. Columns carved with intricate alien symbols stretched toward a ceiling shrouded in shadow. Pools of light shimmered on the floor, reflecting from crystals embedded in the walls. A faint floral scent lingered in the air, mingling with the tang of ozone. "Okay," Jackson said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Definitely cooler than the last temple. That one just had a broken vending machine." He wandered deeper, the hum from outside growing louder. At the center of the chamber stood a raised dais, and on it a figure. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, catching the light in ways that made her seem both ethereal and solid. Her long hair flowed as if caught in an unseen breeze, and her eyes, glowing with a pale silvery light, locked onto him with an intensity that made him freeze in his tracks. "Finally," she said, her voice resonating like a chord plucked on some cosmic instrument. "You have arrived." Jackson blinked. Then he looked around as if expecting someone else to pop out of the shadows. Sorry. You sure you've got the right guy? I'm just here for the, ambiance." The woman stepped down from the dais, her movements fluid and deliberate. "I have waited 1,000 years for this moment," she said, her tone reverent. "Wow," Jackson said, taking a cautious step back. "That's some serious patience. Personally, I get annoyed waiting for a pizza delivery." Her expression didn't change. "You are the one foretold by the prophecy, the heir of the starlight, the savior of the galaxy." Jackson stared at her, then burst out laughing. "Okay, sure, and after that I'll be crowned emperor of the universe and invent a cure for boredom. Look, shiny lady, I think you've got the wrong tourist." Her brows furrowed slightly, the first crack in her otherwise serene demeanor. "You do not believe me?" "Not even a little," he said, still chuckling. "I mean, come on. Prophecies? Galaxy-saving heroes? I'm a blogger. My biggest accomplishment this year was getting a free upgrade to first class." The woman's gaze didn't waver. "You bear the mark." "The mark?" Jackson repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Is that like a rash? Because I'm pretty sure I—" Before he could finish, she reached out and pressed a hand to his chest. A sudden warmth spread through him, and he felt something stir beneath his skin. He looked down to see a faint glowing symbol appear over his heart, an intricate starburst pattern. "Oh, come on," he muttered. "That's got to be some kind of trick." "You are the one," she said simply, stepping back. Jackson sighed, rubbing his temples. "All right, let's say for a second that I buy this whole chosen one thing. What exactly am I supposed to do?" "Restore the Starlight Keystone," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. "Ah, of course," Jackson said dryly. "The Starlight Keystone. Why didn't I think of that?" As Larea, as she eventually introduced herself, explained the prophecy, Jackson found himself torn between disbelief and reluctant fascination. According to her, the Keystone was an ancient artifact that once protected the galaxy from a malevolent entity known as the Voidborn. But the Keystone had shattered, its fragments scattered across the stars. Only the heir of the starlight could reunite them and prevent the Voidborn's return. "Let me guess," Jackson said, leaning against a column. "I'm the guy who has to go running all over the galaxy to find these pieces, right?" "Correct," Larea said. "Figures," he muttered. "And what's in it for me?" "The survival of all life," she replied, her tone dead serious. Jackson scratched his chin. Tempting, but you're gonna have to sweeten the deal. Do I at least get a cool spaceship?" For the first time, Larea's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "We shall see." As the sun set outside the temple, painting the walls with hues of gold and crimson, Jackson realized two things. One, he had no idea how to get himself out of this mess. And two, a part of him didn't want to. Whether it was Larea's unshakable conviction or the sheer absurdity of the situation, he couldn't deny he was intrigued. "All right," he said at last. "I'll play along. But just so you know, I'm probably the least qualified hero you're ever going to get." Larea nodded solemnly. "Perhaps. But the stars have chosen you." "Great," Jackson muttered. "Thanks a lot, stars." Jackson leaned against one of the temple's cool, glowing columns, absently tracing the faint starburst symbol on his chest. "So, let me get this straight," he said, his tone laced with skepticism. "You expect me to run around the galaxy looking for magic rocks to fix some interstellar paperweight?" Larea stood tall, her silvery form radiant even in the fading light of the chamber. Her expression remained calm, but carried an undercurrent of impatience. "The Keystone is no paperweight. It is the galaxy's only hope against the Voidborn, an entity that consumes everything in its path." Jackson waved a hand dismissively. Yeah, galaxy in peril. Big bad Voidborn. Totally get it. But why me? I'm just a guy with a half-dead blog and a knack for bad decisions." Larea's glowing eyes bore into him. "The prophecy is clear. Only the heir of the starlight can wield the power to restore the Keystone." "And you're sure it's me?" Jackson asked, half hoping she'd suddenly realize she'd made a mistake. She raised an elegant eyebrow. "The mark does not lie." Jackson groaned. "Great. Chosen by a cosmic rash." The chamber grew dim as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that danced across the alien glyphs. Larea gestured for Jackson to follow her toward the dais. Resting atop it was a crystalline shard, about the size of a hand, glowing faintly with an inner light. "This," Larea began, "is a fragment of the Starlight Keystone. It must be reassembled to restore its power." Jackson squinted at it. "Looks fragile. What happens if I drop it?" Larea didn't dignify that with a response. Instead, she placed her hands gently around the shard, and the room filled with a resonant hum. The glyphs on the walls flared to life, and the shard lifted into the air, floating between her palms. "The shard will guide you to the next fragment," she said. "But beware, the Voidborn's agents will do everything to stop you." Jackson's eyes widened. "Wait, agents? You mean I'll have bad guys chasing me now?" Larea nodded gravely. "The Voidborn's influence is vast. Its followers are fanatical and relentless." Jackson threw up his hands. "Of course they are. Can't a guy just take a vacation without being hunted by intergalactic zealots?" After what felt like hours of Larea's crash course on galactic doom, Jackson sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the shard now securely packed in a sleek metallic case. "So, hypothetically," he said, leaning back, If I decided to nope out of this whole savior gig, what happens? Larea's gaze darkened. The Voidborn will rise unchecked. Stars will die. Worlds will burn. Got it. Total apocalypse, Jackson muttered. No pressure. The faintest hint of a smile tugged at Larea's lips. You jest, but I believe the stars chose you for a reason. Jackson snorted. Yeah, probably as a cosmic joke. As dawn approached, the two of them stood at the temple's entrance. The jungle beyond was alive with the sounds of alien wildlife, and the shifting sky painted the world in vibrant hues. Larea held a small, circular device and handed it to Jackson. This communicator will keep us in contact, she explained. You must leave immediately. Time is short. Jackson turned the device over in his hands. Right. Go find the next shard, save the galaxy. Easy peasy. Before he could step away, a deep rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. The air grew heavy and the jungle fell eerily silent. Larea stiffened, her glowing eyes narrowing. They've found us. Who's they? Jackson asked, already regretting the question. A low, guttural roar echoed through the trees, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Shapes emerged from the jungle's shadows, hulking figures clad in dark, jagged armor. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural red light, and their weapons crackled with malevolent energy. Voidborn agents, Larea said, her voice cold and steady. She stepped in front of Jackson, her silvery form radiating an intense light. Stay behind me. Jackson took an instinctive step back. Not a problem. One of the agents raised a weapon, a wicked-looking spear that hummed ominously. Before it could strike, Larea moved with blinding speed. Her hand shot forward, releasing a burst of silvery light that sent the attacker sprawling. Whoa, Jackson breathed. You didn't mention you had superpowers. Larea didn't respond, too focused on the fight. More agents closed in, their movements coordinated and ruthless. Jackson ducked as a spear sailed over his head, embedding itself in the temple wall with a crackle of energy. Okay, time to go, he shouted, scrambling toward the jungle. Larea fought like a force of nature, her every movement precise and devastating. But the agents kept coming, their numbers overwhelming. She turned to Jackson, her expression fierce. Take the shard and run, she commanded. Are you kidding? He yelled back. You can't take them all on by yourself. Go, she shouted, her voice reverberating with authority. I will find you. Jackson hesitated for a split second before turning and bolting into the jungle. The shard case was strapped securely to his back, bouncing with every frantic step. Behind him, the sounds of battle faded into the distance, replaced by the rustling leaves and alien calls of the jungle. As he ran, one thought echoed in his mind. What the hell have I gotten myself into? Jackson stumbled through the jungle, sweat trickling down his brow as the shard case bounced uncomfortably on his back. Alien trees with phosphorescent leaves loomed over him, their glowing branches casting eerie shadows. Somewhere in the distance, the guttural roars of Voidborn agents still echoed, but for now, they seemed to have lost his trail. Just a regular Tuesday, Jackson muttered to himself. He swatted at a buzzing insect the size of his fist, find some magic rocks, dodge murderous zealots, and probably catch space malaria, living the dream. The shard case beeped softly, pulling his attention. A small holographic arrow projected upward, spinning slightly before settling to point northward. Jackson raised an eyebrow. Well, at least this thing knows where it's going. Shame I don't. As he trudged forward, the jungle's vibrant flora seemed to come alive, bioluminescent vines pulsing with faint light. Strange bird-like creatures with iridescent feathers flitted overhead, their calls resembling musical chimes. It was almost beautiful, if not for the whole being hunted aspect. After an hour of walking, Jackson reached a clearing where a rusted alien vehicle sat abandoned, half consumed by creeping vines. It looked vaguely like a hovercraft, though its sleek design was marred by centuries of neglect. Hello, gorgeous, Jackson said, brushing off some of the moss. "You're my ticket out of this nightmare. Please tell me you're not as dead as you look." A quick inspection revealed a cracked control panel and a power core that looked as fried as his nerves. He sighed. "Okay, plan B. Fix the unfixable. Because apparently, that's my thing now." Using a multi-tool from his pocket, Jackson began tinkering. Sparks flew as he crossed wires and bypassed circuits. "Come on, baby. Don't let me down. Just give me a sign." The hovercraft sputtered to life with a grating whine, its lights flickering weakly. Jackson pumped a fist. "Yes, never doubted you for a second." He climbed inside, the seat's material crumbling slightly under his weight. "All right, let's get out of here before—" A low growl interrupted him. Jackson froze, turning his head slowly to see a creature lurking at the edge of the clearing. It was roughly the size of a bear, with 6 glowing eyes and scales that shimmered like oil slicks. Hey there, big guy," Jackson said, hands raised. "Nice. Teeth? Listen, I was just leaving." The creature snarled and lunged. Jackson yelped, slamming his hand on the controls. The hovercraft shot forward with a jolt, narrowly avoiding the creature's snapping jaws. As he sped away, he glanced back to see it chasing him, its massive form barreling through the underbrush. "Of course it's fast," he muttered. "Why wouldn't it be fast?" The chase led him to a river, a wide-rushing torrent with water that sparkled unnaturally. Jackson swerved, skidding to a halt just before the riverbank. The creature was close behind, snarling as it closed the gap. "Think, Jackson, think," he muttered, frantically scanning his surroundings. His eyes landed on a dilapidated bridge spanning the river. It looked about as stable as a politician's promise, but it was his only option. Gunning the hovercraft, he sped onto the bridge, the rickety structure groaning under the weight. The creature hesitated for a moment before leaping onto the bridge, its claws splintering the wooden planks. Halfway across, the bridge began to collapse. Jackson floored it, the hovercraft barely making it to the other side as the structure gave way. The creature plunged into the river below, its roars fading as it was swept downstream. Jackson leaned back in the seat, breathing heavily. "Yeah, that's right. Who's the apex predator now?" The hovercraft beeped angrily, smoke rising from its engine. "Oh, come on," Jackson groaned as it sputtered to a halt. "I'm getting real tired of this." Jackson continued on foot, muttering under his breath about cosmic conspiracies and terrible luck. The shard's holographic arrow eventually led him to a cave entrance, its mouth framed by jagged rocks that glowed faintly in the dark. Inside, the air was cool and damp, the walls covered in shimmering crystals. The shard case beeped excitedly, its arrow pointing deeper into the cave. "Great," Jackson said, his voice echoing, "because nothing bad ever happens in creepy alien caves." As he ventured further, he noticed glyphs carved into the walls, symbols similar to those in the temple. He reached out to touch one, and it flared to life, projecting a hologram of a humanoid figure with elongated features and glowing eyes. "Traveler," the hologram intoned in a melodic voice, "you seek the keystone." "Yup," Jackson said, crossing his arms. "Just your average guy on a galaxy-saving scavenger hunt. You wouldn't happen to have a map, would you?" The hologram ignored him. "Beware the trials ahead. Only the worthy may claim the shard." Before Jackson could ask for clarification, the hologram vanished, and the ground beneath him began to rumble. From the shadows emerged a series of mechanical constructs, each armed with glowing blades. "Oh, for the love of—" Jackson dove behind a crystal formation as the constructs advanced. Gripping his multi-tool, he muttered, "Okay, Jackson. You've got this. Just don't die." What followed was a chaotic dance of dodging, weaving, and improvising. Jackson used the environment to his advantage, triggering collapses and short-circuiting the constructs with sparks from exposed wires. At one point, he accidentally triggered a self-destruct sequence on one of them, narrowly escaping the resulting explosion. Finally, The last construct fell, its glowing core sputtering out. Jackson collapsed against a crystal wall, panting. "And they said I'd never amount to anything," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. At the center of the chamber, a pedestal rose from the ground, bearing a fragment identical to the one in his case. As Jackson approached, the shard began to glow, resonating with its counterpart. He carefully placed it in the case, which sealed with a soft hiss. "Two down," he said. "Only an infinite number to go." In exiting the cave, Jackson was greeted by the sound of a familiar voice crackling through the communicator. "Jackson," Larea's voice came through, tinged with urgency. "You've retrieved the shard?" "Yeah," he replied, holding up the case. "And I almost got eaten, drowned, and dismembered in the process. What's next?" "We have a problem," Larea said. "The Voidborn agents have intercepted our signal. They're heading your way." Jackson groaned. "Of course they are." "Because why not?" As the communicator cut out, Jackson glanced at the jungle ahead, the faint sounds of distant roars reaching his ears. Clutching the case tightly, he muttered, "Just another day in paradise." The air inside the cave grew warmer as Jackson leaned against the wall, catching his breath. The shard case hummed faintly, and for a brief moment he allowed himself to relax. Then the distant echo of engines reverberated through the cavern, shaking the crystals embedded in the walls. His moment of peace was gone. "You've got to be kidding me," Jackson muttered, gripping the shard case tighter. No rest for the galaxy's least likely hero. He adjusted his communicator, the static clearing just enough to hear Larea's voice on the other end. "Jackson, you need to move. They're closing in fast." "Oh, I'd love to move," he replied, glancing toward the cave entrance. "Except my hovercraft decided it was time for early retirement. Any brilliant ideas?" Larea's sigh crackled over the line. "There's a pickup beacon approximately 2 kilometers north of your location. If you can activate it, I'll swing around in the Ecliptica and extract you." 2 kilometers? Through hostile jungle and with Voidborn on my tail? "Unless you'd prefer dying in a cave," Larea quipped. Jackson groaned. All right, north it is. Just don't forget to show up, okay? I'll think about it." Jackson emerged from the cave and immediately regretted it. The oppressive heat of the jungle hit him like a wave, and the guttural roars of Voidborn hunting parties echoed ominously in the distance. He adjusted his grip on the shard case, muttering to himself as he began trudging through the dense foliage. What do Voidborn even want with this thing? Don't they have their own galaxy-ending hobbies? A rustle in the underbrush stopped him in his tracks. He spun around, multi-tool in hand, only to find himself face to face with a small alien creature. It resembled a cross between a raccoon and a jellyfish, its translucent body pulsing with soft blue light. The creature chirped inquisitively, tilting its head. Jackson sighed in relief. "Oh, it's just you. Listen, buddy, unless you can fight off a squad of murderous zealots, I suggest you—" The creature let out a shrill screech and scurried away. Seconds later, a Voidborn scout burst through the foliage, its insectoid eyes locking onto Jackson. "Right," Jackson said, backing away. "Guess that's my cue." The scout lunged and Jackson threw himself to the side, narrowly avoiding a swipe from its blade-like arm. He scrambled to his feet and bolted, ducking under branches and leaping over roots. The jungle blurred around him as adrenaline kicked in. Several frantic minutes later, Jackson stumbled into a clearing dominated by an ancient alien structure. The pickup beacon Larea had mentioned stood in the center, a sleek obelisk of metallic black that hummed faintly with dormant energy. "Finally!" Jackson panted, rushing toward the beacon. He fumbled with the control panel, swiping at buttons and levers in a desperate attempt to activate it. The obelisk sputtered, lights flickering but refusing to power up. "Oh, come on! Don't do this to me!" A distorted voice behind him made his blood run cold. "Human, surrender the shard." Jackson turned slowly to see a Voidborn enforcer standing at the edge of the clearing, its armor glinting menacingly in the sunlight. It raised a plasma rifle, aiming directly at him. "Listen," Jackson said, raising his hands. "I'd love to give you the shard, but no, actually I wouldn't. So how about we skip the part where you shoot me and I make a miraculous escape?" The Voidborn's response was to fire a warning shot that vaporized a nearby tree. "Fair enough," Jackson muttered. He glanced at the beacon, then back at the Enforcer. "Okay, plan B." Without thinking, he grabbed a small, glowing crystal from the ground and hurled it at the Voidborn. The crystal exploded on impact, releasing a blinding flash of light and a concussive wave that sent the Enforcer reeling. Jackson didn't wait to see the aftermath. He turned back to the beacon, jamming his multi-tool into its power port and praying for a miracle. The obelisk roared to life, beams of light shooting into the sky. Jackson grinned triumphantly, then froze as he heard more Voidborn approaching. "Larea!" he shouted into the communicator. "Beacon's up! Any chance you're nearby?" "Inbound," Larea replied, her voice crackling. "Hold them off for 30 seconds. 30 seconds? Easy. I'll just—" Jackson's voice trailed off as 3 more Enforcers emerged from the jungle. He swallowed hard. Die horribly. Armed with nothing but his multi-tool and a rapidly dwindling supply of courage, Jackson began hurling whatever he could find at the Voidborn. Rocks, sticks, and even his jacket became improvised projectiles. The Enforcers advanced relentlessly, their weapons glowing ominously. Just as Jackson thought his luck had run out, a deafening roar filled the clearing. The Ecliptica descended from the sky, its sleek hull gleaming as its weapons unleashed a barrage of firepower. The Voidborn scattered, retreating into the jungle under the onslaught. The ship's ramp lowered, and Larea's voice called out, "Get in, Jackson!" He didn't need to be told twice. Sprinting toward the ship, he dove onto the ramp just as it began to close. The Ecliptica shot into the sky, leaving the jungle and its dangers behind. In the safety of the ship's cockpit, Jackson collapsed into a chair, clutching the shard case to his chest. Larea glanced at him from the pilot's seat, one eyebrow raised. "You look like you've been through hell." Jackson gave her a weak smile. "Hell, Jungle Edition. 10 out of 10 would not recommend." Larea smirked, then turned her attention back to the controls. "You've got the shard. That's what matters." Jackson leaned back, closing his eyes. "Yeah, but at this rate, the galaxy's gonna kill me before I can save it." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Larea replied. Her tone was light, but Jackson caught the hint of determination beneath it. For now, at least, he was safe. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. The Ecliptica hummed softly as it drifted through hyperspace, its sleek interior bathed in an eerie blue glow. Jackson sat cross-legged on the floor of the cargo bay, tinkering with the shard case. He was certain it had locked itself out in protest of his constant fumbling. "You know, for a piece of ancient alien tech, you're remarkably temperamental," he muttered, tapping its surface. It responded by emitting a sharp, almost offended beep. Jackson winced. Yeah, I get it. I'm the problem." From behind him, Larea's voice broke the silence. "Talking to inanimate objects is a sign of stress, you know." Jackson turned to see her leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, an amused smirk playing on her lips. She looked far too composed for someone who had just fought off a squad of Voidborn. "It's either this or scream into the void," Jackson replied, holding up the shard case. Although screaming might actually get better results. Larea stepped into the room and plopped down beside him, her cybernetic arm glinting under the bay lights. "You've got the finesse of a sand slug trying to play the violin. Here, let me see." Reluctantly, Jackson handed her the shard case. She studied it for a moment before pressing a series of buttons with practiced precision. The case emitted a soft chime and unlocked, revealing the crystalline shard within. It pulsed faintly as if alive. Jackson stared in disbelief. "How did you—" Larea shrugged. "Alien tech isn't that different from humans. Both respond to a little patience and a lot of sweet talking." "Sweet talking? You didn't even say anything." She smirked. Did it work? Jackson grumbled something unintelligible and leaned back against a crate. The shard's glow reflected in his eyes, and for a moment, the weight of its importance settled heavily on his shoulders. So, he said, breaking the silence, this thing, it's supposed to save the galaxy, right? Any chance it'll also do my taxes or make me breakfast? Larea snorted. If only. As the Ecliptica continued its journey, the ship's AI, a disembodied voice named Vin, chimed in. Captain, there is an incoming transmission flagged as urgent. Larea's expression hardened. Patch it through. The holographic display in the center of the cargo bay flickered to life, revealing a frantic-looking man with graying hair and a lab coat that had seen better days. Larea! Finally! I've been trying to reach you for hours. Dr. Solon, Larea greeted, her tone wary. What's the emergency? It's the shard, Solon said, his voice trembling. The Voidborn aren't just after it for its power. They want to... The transmission cut out abruptly, replaced by static. Vin? Larea barked. What happened? The signal was disrupted, Vin replied. Possibly a Voidborn interference. Jackson rubbed his temples. Great. Now we're flying blind. Larea stood, her jaw set. Not quite. Solon's last known location was the research station on Calixis 3. That's where we're headed. Calixis 3? Jackson groaned. Isn't that the planet with acid rain and flesh-eating plants? Only during the monsoon season, Larea replied with a straight face. Then she added, which, coincidentally, starts tomorrow. Jackson stared at her, incredulous. You're joking. Please tell me you're joking. She smiled faintly. You'll find out soon enough. Hours later, the Ecliptica dropped out of hyperspace, the chaotic surface of Calixis 3 looming on the view screen. The planet's stormy atmosphere churned with streaks of green lightning, and thick, roiling clouds obscured the landscape below. Well, Jackson said, staring at the planet, it's not exactly a vacation spot. Larea's hands moved deftly over the controls. Buckle up. The atmosphere's a bit temperamental. As the ship descended, turbulence rattled its frame, and Jackson clung to his seat, muttering a stream of increasingly colorful expletives. Relax, Larea said, not looking up. I've done this 100 times. Yeah, well, I haven't. The ship broke through the cloud cover, revealing a sprawling jungle of phosphorescent plants and rivers that glowed an unsettling shade of neon blue. The research station was visible in the distance, perched precariously on a cliffside. There it is, Larea said. Brace yourself. Landing here is like threading a needle while someone's shaking the fabric. Fantastic, Jackson muttered, gripping his seat tighter. The landing was, as promised, rough. The ship's stabilizers groaned in protest as they touched down on a rickety platform near the station. Jackson stumbled out of his seat, his legs wobbling like jelly. I'll never complain about turbulence on Earth again, he said. Larea ignored him, already focused on the task ahead. Stay close. The Voidborn won't be far behind. As they approached the station, Jackson couldn't help but marvel at the bizarre flora surrounding them. One particularly large plant emitted a low rumbling sound, as though growling at their presence. That thing's not alive, is it? He asked nervously. Larea glanced at the plant. Oh, it's alive. Just don't make eye contact. Jackson blinked. It has eyes? Before Larea could answer, a deafening roar erupted from the jungle, and several Voidborn scouts emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn. Why is it always Voidborn? Jackson complained, ducking behind a rock as plasma bolts whizzed past. Larea drew her sidearm and returned fire, her aim precise. Because you stole their favorite toy, remember? I didn't steal it. It practically fell into my lap. Try explaining that to them. The battle was chaotic, with Jackson's attempts at fighting largely consisting of ducking and yelling, while Larea did most of the actual work. At one point, He tried throwing a rock, only for it to bounce harmlessly off a Voidborn's armor. Effective, Larea deadpanned, taking down the Voidborn with a well-placed shot. Hey, I'm contributing. Sure you are. Eventually, the remaining Voidborn retreated, disappearing into the jungle. Jackson emerged from his hiding spot, brushing dirt off his jacket. You know, he said, this whole galaxy-saving gig isn't exactly what I signed up for. Larea gave him a wry smile. Welcome to the team. They continued toward the research station, the ominous jungle closing in around them. Despite the danger, Jackson couldn't help but crack a smile. You know, he said, if we survive this, I'm writing a book. Larea raised an eyebrow. What'll you call it? How Not to Die in Space, A Beginner's Guide. She chuckled softly, and for a moment, the tension eased. But as the station loomed closer, they both knew the worst was yet to come. The rain on Calixis 3 was no ordinary rain. It fell in sheets of glimmering, acidic droplets, each sizzle on the hull of the Ecliptica, a reminder that the planet had a personality. And it wasn't friendly. Inside the cramped cockpit, Jackson watched the deluge with mounting dread. Larea, he began, peering out the window. Do you ever think about, I don't know, landing on a nice tropical beach planet? Maybe one with drinks served in coconuts? Larea shot him a sidelong glance as she adjusted her suit's environmental controls. Calixis 3 has coconuts. They're just filled with neurotoxic sap instead of juice. Ah, paradise, Jackson muttered, tugging at the straps of his suit. The acidic rain wouldn't kill them instantly, but he wasn't eager to test its patience. Please tell me you packed an umbrella. Larea smirked. I've got something better. Follow me. The Ecliptica's ramp lowered with a hiss, and the pair stepped onto the rain-soaked platform. The research station loomed ahead, its metallic structure battered but intact. Larea activated a wrist-mounted shield generator, and a faint dome of energy shimmered to life, repelling the rain. Jackson stepped under it gratefully. Oh, this is cozy, he quipped, a romantic stroll in a death storm. Keep moving, Larea said, her voice all business. The Voidborn won't wait for us to hold hands. The platform's slick surface made progress slow. Jackson slipped twice, only catching himself on Larea's shoulder the second time. Could you walk any slower? She asked, exasperated. Could you walk any faster without leaving me to be melted into a puddle? He shot back. We're not all alien cyborg warriors, you know. She chuckled softly, surprising him. Point taken. Try not to fall off the platform. I'm not jumping into acid to save you. Inside the research station, the air was stale, tinged with the faint metallic tang of disuse. Flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. Jackson's steps echoed in the empty halls, amplifying his unease. This place feels like a horror movie set, he said, keeping close to Larea. Any chance the Voidborn just decided to take a vacation? Not likely, she replied, scanning the area with her pistol drawn. Stay alert. As they moved deeper into the station, Jackson's unease grew. The rooms they passed were in disarray, equipment overturned, monitors shattered, and scorch marks on the walls. Looks like someone had a party, Jackson remarked, though his voice lacked its usual humor. Larea frowned. Voidborn don't party. They exterminate. In the control room, they found a single survivor, a small spherical droid hovering near a bank of consoles. Its lights flickered erratically, and it emitted a series of distressed beeps as they entered. Ah, look at that, Jackson said, approaching the droid. It's like a little traumatized toaster. The droid beeped indignantly, swiveling to face him. Larea sighed. That's a Class 4 interface unit. It might have recorded what happened here. She tapped a few buttons on its chassis, and a holographic display projected into the air. The grainy image showed Dr. Solon, the man from the earlier transmission, frantically typing at a console. Behind him, a group of Voidborn burst into the room. The feed cut off as the Voidborn opened fire. Well, Jackson said, That's not ominous at all. The droid emitted a mournful whistle. Laria's jaw tightened. Solon might still be alive. Let's move. As they followed the trail deeper into the station, the humor of their earlier banter gave way to grim determination. The corridors were littered with the remains of both Voidborn and station personnel. Jackson tried not to look too closely. "Do you ever get used to this?" he asked quietly. Laria shook her head. "You don't. You just keep moving." They reached the station's main lab, where they found Dr. Solon barricaded behind an overturned table. He looked up as they entered, relief flooding his face. "Laria, you made it." "What happened here?" she asked, helping him to his feet. "The Voidborn overwhelmed us," he said, his voice trembling. "They're after the shard's resonance data. They think it's the key to activating the Celestial Gateway." Jackson blinked. "The Celestial what now?" "A myth," Laria said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "A supposedly ancient portal to another dimension." Solon shook his head. "It's real, and if the Voidborn access it, they'll unleash a force we can't control." Jackson raised a hand. "Okay, pause. Are we talking about interdimensional monsters? Because I'd like to go on record as being very anti-monster." "We don't have time for jokes," Laria snapped. Jackson shrugged. "It's either that or panic, and I'm trying to keep my options open." Their conversation was cut short by the sound of heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Voidborn. Laria and Jackson exchanged a glance. "Time to go," she said. Solon hesitated. "Wait! I need to retrieve the shard's harmonics data. It's in the auxiliary lab." "Are you kidding?" Jackson asked. "The guys with the plasma guns are literally on their way. Without that data, we have no chance of stopping them," Solon insisted. Laria groaned. "Fine. Lead the way." The auxiliary lab was a maze of tangled wires and towering equipment. Solon rushed to a console and began downloading the data while Laria and Jackson stood guard. "This feels like a terrible idea," Jackson muttered, his grip tightening on his borrowed pistol. "You're not wrong," Laria replied, her eyes scanning the corridor. "But it's our only option." The download completed just as the first Voidborn appeared. Laria opened fire, her shots precise and unrelenting. Jackson, meanwhile, managed to graze a Voidborn's armor before fumbling to reload. "You're doing great," Laria said dryly, taking out another enemy. "Thanks. I've been practicing," Jackson shot back, finally managing to reload. With the data secured, they made a desperate dash back to the Ecliptica. The storm had intensified, the acidic rain now accompanied by gale-force winds. Jackson slipped twice more, swearing loudly each time. "Would you focus?" Laria shouted over the wind. "I'm trying," he yelled back. "But nature hates me." They reached the ship and scrambled aboard, the ramp closing just as the first Voidborn reached the platform. The Ecliptica lifted off, shaking violently as it ascended through the storm. In the relative safety of hyperspace, Jackson collapsed into a chair, his heart pounding. "Next time," he said between breaths, "let's just steal a beach ball instead of galaxy-saving artifacts." Laria chuckled softly. "I'll keep that in mind." Solon, clutching the data drive like a lifeline, looked between them. "You two are insane." "Welcome to the club," Jackson replied, flashing a tired grin. "Membership comes with a free side of existential dread." Despite the danger still looming, a small, fleeting moment of camaraderie settled over them. For now, at least, they were alive, and that was enough. The Ecliptica drifted out of hyperspace and into the orbit of a shimmering nebula. Beyond its swirling iridescent hues lay a massive construct suspended in space, a lattice of ancient alien architecture pulsating with faint light. The Celestial Gateway. It was breathtaking and terrifying all at once. Jackson leaned against the cockpit console, staring at the structure. So, let me get this straight. The Voidborn want to use this thing to open a portal to another dimension, probably full of worse things than themselves. We, meanwhile, are supposed to just shut it down? With what? Optimism? Larea's expression was as grim as ever. Not optimism. This. She held up a crystalline shard, its surface fracturing light into an array of colors. Solon says the shard's resonance harmonics are the key to disrupting the gateway's activation sequence. Solon's voice piped in from the back of the ship. If I can interface with their control nodes, I should be able to overload the lattice. He paused. But it'll be dangerous. Jackson snorted. Dangerous? Wow, Solon. You really undersold this whole suicide mission thing. Got any more comforting news to share? Solon's face peeked into view, his expression earnest. The Voidborn likely know we're here. They'll try to stop us. And there it is, Jackson said, throwing up his hands. Just once I'd like to crash a party without the hosts trying to kill me. The Ecliptica docked with a precarious landing on one of the gateway's massive arms. The trio stepped out, weapons and tools in hand, into an environment that felt like stepping into the heart of a star. Energy radiated from every surface, and alien glyphs scrawled across the walls pulsed faintly, as though alive. How does something this old still work? Jackson muttered, staring in awe. Larea replied without breaking stride. Because it wasn't made by amateurs. Good to know ancient aliens were overachievers, Jackson said. Makes me feel so much better about our odds. Solon gestured toward a set of crystalline pillars ahead. Those are the control nodes. If we synchronize the shard's resonance with the lattice, it should create a feedback loop that disrupts the entire system. Should, Jackson repeated. Love the confidence. As they approached the control nodes, the air around them shimmered, and with a burst of energy, Voidborn emerged from the ether. Their tall, skeletal forms and glowing eyes were as unnerving as ever. And here's the welcoming committee, Jackson quipped, raising his pistol. Great. Larea was already firing, her movements precise and fluid. Jackson tried to keep up, but his shots mostly served as distractions. Solon ducked behind a pillar, frantically setting up his equipment. You've got this, right? Jackson called to Larea as he narrowly avoided a Voidborn's energy blast. Cover me or shut up, she snapped, dropping another Voidborn with a well-placed shot. Fine, but if we survive this, I'm voting for a vacation planet next time, Jackson grumbled, firing wildly. One of his shots actually connected, and the Voidborn disintegrated into ash. Hey, I got one! Congratulations, now focus, Larea shouted. Solon's voice broke through the chaos. The shard is synchronized, but we need a power surge to trigger the feedback loop. Someone has to manually reroute the energy. Jackson groaned. Of course someone does. Larea, tell me it's not me. Larea glanced at him, her expression softening just a fraction. You're faster with repairs than I am. Solon and I will cover you. Fast repairs? That's not the same as volunteering for electrical suicide, Jackson protested. Move, she barked. Grumbling, Jackson darted toward a nearby console, dodging Voidborn attacks with what he considered astonishing grace. This better not kill me, he muttered as he began rerouting the energy pathways. Sparks flew, and the console emitted a shrill whine. Or ruin my hair. With a final connection, the shard's energy surged through the gateway. The structure vibrated, its glowing glyphs flickering erratically. The Voidborn froze mid-attack, their forms shimmering like unstable holograms. It's working, Solon shouted. The gateway's lattice began to collapse, the energy spiraling inward in a dazzling display. The Voidborn screeched as they were pulled into the implosion, vanishing one by one. Jackson barely had time to dive for cover as the gateway's core erupted in a blinding flash. When the light faded, Silence descended. The gateway's remains floated in the nebula, inert and harmless. Did we win? Jackson asked, coughing as he sat up. Larea helped him to his feet. We're alive. That's close enough. Solon emerged from behind a console, clutching the shard. The Voidborn are gone and the gateway is destroyed. I'd call that a win. Jackson grinned. Well, I'm adding this to my list of reasons to retire early. Larea smirked. You'd be bored within a week. Maybe, Jackson admitted, but I'd risk it for a beach and a drink. Back aboard the Ecliptica, the three shared a rare moment of quiet. Jackson leaned back in his seat, staring out at the stars. You know, for all the near-death experiences, I'm glad I came along. Larea raised an eyebrow. Even without the beach? He chuckled. Even without the beach. Solon held up the shard, now dim and lifeless. What do we do with this? Hide it, Larea said firmly. Somewhere no one will ever find it. Jackson nodded. I vote for burying it under a pile of coconuts. Larea rolled her eyes, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. For the first time in a long while, they had a chance to breathe, and maybe, just maybe, to hope. As the Ecliptica soared into the endless expanse of space, Jackson's voice broke the silence. So, about that vacation planet,